Smart Trucking live, back at you here. We're going to talk about driver's pay and the inadequacies of it. Just to start, can anyone hear me? Are you guys picking me up out there? Hello from NJ. Yes, sir. Oh, great. Excellent. Thank you. Brandon. Thank you.
That's New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. Excellent. Thanks for writing in. Nova Scotia, Canada. Appreciate it. Hello. I was always pretty lucky in my trucking career, and a lot of it is luck. Let's just be honest about it. I started driving company trucks in the 70s. I was working for good people. They treated me fairly. They worked me hard, but they paid me well. I bought my first truck in the early 80s. I went after niche markets that paid well. I worked like a dog. But again, I was lucky. I didn't get burned too many times by people, and I kept going. But in the course of my 40 years of working, I encountered an awful lot of guys that were getting scammed or taken advantage of, a lot of them by the big carriers when it came to getting paid and their lifestyle and stuff. And it was sad to watch, and it really bothered me. So after 40 years, I've kind of retired from over the road. But Kathy and I started Smart Trucking in part to see if we could protest and help the pay system for over-the-road drivers, because it's just not right. There are a lot of unscrupulous carriers, big carriers especially, unscrupulous load brokers, and here are guys just sinking their hearts and soul. They're working their butts off trying to make it in the trucking industry, and these carriers are just scamming them, and the load brokers are scamming them. They don't understand what's going on, and they end up losing everything. They end up losing their houses. They get divorced because their wife gets disgusted because they're not bringing in any money. 40 cents a decent mile starting wage? Well, it depends on where you are. If you're on the eastern seaboard, it's not that great, but if you're out west, yes, that's not bad money at all. Anyway, so we wanted to bring to the forefront the fact that the pay for everybody is a problem in this industry anymore. And I think it needs to be fixed. Kentucky Ranger, hello, how are you? Thanks. The title is fine. I appreciate that. But what do you guys think? Is paid by the mile a fair system anymore? It seems to me that pay by the mile has changed since I came into the industry. I ran long haul, and if you were paid by the mile back then, you could do 700-800 miles a day, and it was a good living. It really was. You didn't have too many stops. You weren't at the loading docks very long. These days, there's not so much long haul work. It's more short hop stuff. You're always getting stuck in traffic and not getting compensated for it. Some of these guys are sitting at the loading docks for hours and hours. I actually ran into a few guys that were camping at a customer's. They were on their third day waiting for loads. The carrier, it was Schneider, had told them to sit there and wait for the loads, and they were on their third day living in this customer's parking lot. That stuff happens all the time, and it's just wrong. Mileage pay has always been a real sore spot with me. Kentucky Ranger, yes, yeah, it's one of the biggest problems. It's become a big scam in this industry to pay guys by the mile and then not even pay them the number of miles that they've done. You can't trust the carrier to pay you correctly anymore. I think the whole system needs to change. I think we could probably still get away with getting paid by the mile if the carriers were willing to verify how many miles we'd done and it matched our odometers or matched PC Miler, and they could prove that to you at any time. And as for the sitting time or the stuck in traffic time or the waiting time between loads or the resets, there's got to be some other way to pay us for that. We need to be paid for that. We need to be paid for all our time. By the hour is the only fair system that I can think of. to get paid that way. So what do you guys think? Kentucky Ranger, I think truckers should be paid a straight salary and just put the truck within your legal limits. Yes, that would work just fine. Just promise the guy a set salary per week, what he'd clear, and then just put him to work and make sure he was home when the agreement said he should be home at the end of the week or every night or whatever the agreement was. A salary would work, paid by the hour would work, and I'm not just talking here. I've practiced what I preached. I've come off the road and taken an hourly job because it was getting to the point where getting paid with owning my own truck and trailer, the money just wasn't there. The freight wasn't there. You spent too much time screwing around. It was all lost time. So I'm now paid by the hour. For every hour I work, I'm on an hourly system. At the end of 8 hours, I'm done. If I want to keep going, I'm on time and a half. I'm on double time on holidays. That's the only fair way to be paid. Are company drivers required to be given pay stubs? Absolutely, they should be given pay stubs. You need to be able to keep track of what you're paid, if for no other reason than to be able to prove it to the IRS at the end of the year. Yes, you need pay stubs. Company drivers should be, yes, they are an employee, exactly right. There's so much truck drivers do and never get paid for. Kentucky Ranger, oh man, you are so absolutely right about that. There's so much more to the job than just rolling down the highway. There's just too much donated free time, and they expect that of you to throw in free time. It's not right. You spend time checking your equipment, fixing your equipment, waiting for your equipment, waiting for the customers, waiting between loads. It's all your time, and they expect you to donate it. Yes, I still have my blue 379. I was just out cleaning it here a little while ago. Spring is actually coming here, so it's time to start cleaning up the truck. But yes, I still have the truck. What do you guys think? Salary is a good suggestion from Kentucky Ranger. I like that. But there's got to be a better way to pay these guys so they're not losing their shirts. Kentucky Ranger again. He says there's way too much abuse of drivers' time. I couldn't agree more. He's absolutely right, and that's why I'm on here grousing today. There's got to be a better way, and you know, if the industry wants professional drivers, they've got to pay what professional drivers need to earn. They can't treat you like a low income guy and then expect to get a good guy for that. So, you know, you pay chicken feed, you get chickens, or what's the expression? But anyway, you get what you pay for. We hear the phrase industry standard, and it bugs me. Absolutely. If you hire drivers for your company, how would you structure the way they were paid? I'd figure out something. I'd get my guys together and figure out maybe a salary system like Kentucky Ranger suggested. That's a really good idea. But I'd pay them for all the time they put in. I think we all know how to do that. We just need to change the trucking industry. A fellow writes in. I missed his name there, but yeah, the industry has got to change. And if enough good guys keep leaving the industry, I think the industry is either going to have to decide that they're going to settle for meatheads that'll work for minimum wage, and you know, the public suffers the wrecks that these guys have, and there's quite a bit wrong with that. These are 80,000-pound vehicles or heavier careening down our highways, and the highways are heavily populated. I wouldn't think that the driving public would want just any moron at the wheel of these things these days. But the driving public needs to know that the trucking companies just aren't paying enough to have the good guys drive the trucks. So it's a sad state of affairs that you see these immigrants driving the trucks now, and I'm not being discriminatory here. These immigrants are driving the trucks because they need to. They had to get the work. They have to make something. But that's why you don't see most of the good guys driving the trucks anymore. There's not enough money in it. The immigrants are driving the trucks because they have to, because they need the money. But how much trucking experience and skill do those guys really have? Not very many skills or much experience at all. And that's the problem. I think the solution to morons behind the wheel will be self-driving trucks. Well, I don't think we're going to see that in our lifetime, frankly. There are just too many bugs in the system. They haven't got the sensors working right on these things yet. So it won't be in our generation, I don't think. Maybe sometime, but not in the near future. I don't know. What else do you guys think? Tell me how we can solve this problem. I just finished my training with Maverick Transportation in their reefer division. Gus, do you have any opinions? I understand that Maverick has a fairly good reputation. They're a fairly good company, but I would ask to be paid when if you're sitting at a dock or sitting somewhere waiting, find out from Maverick how they intend to compensate you for your time there. You are there not because you want to be there. You are there because they're asking you, they're telling you to be there. It's going to be part of your job, so that's fine. You're willing to stay and wait at the loading dock or whatever. How do they intend to compensate you for that? Or if you're doing a reset on the road away from home, the conversation has got to be, well, I'm not at home. I'm out here with your truck at your bequest. How are you going to compensate me for this? Because you've got to pay me something. I'm having to pay for my food. It's costing me money to sit out here for you guys. You've got to compensate me somehow. That's got to be the conversation on a reset when you're away from home. It's costing you money to sit out there for the carrier. They need to be paying you something. What if they don't compensate? Should we just keep shopping for a company that will pay downtime? Well, yes, that's my advice. Be nice about it with the carrier, but say, there's just too much downtime. You're not willing to pay me. I found this company over here that's willing to pay me. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave because I need to be paid for my time. Everyone should be paid for all their working time, not just part of their working time. You're away from home, you're working for them, you need to be paid by them. And let them charge the shippers or the carriers. Let them charge whoever they need to compensate you. That's not your problem. Your problem is that you're an employee, and as a respectable employer, they need to compensate you for the time you put in on their behalf. Unpaid downtime is a killer to your paycheck. That's exactly right. Think of all the hours and hours you spend sitting over the course of the year. Add that up and then think, boy, I wasted enough money that could have paid for my new car. Are company drivers obligated to use personal cell phones to field calls from dispatch? No, absolutely not. Unless they're paying your cell phone bill, the dispatcher's got no business calling you on your cell phone. Why is it going to cost you to communicate with them? You're working for them. They need to provide you with a method of communication. I wouldn't even give them my cell phone number if I were you. You're the one paying the bill for that. If they're not paying that, that's goofy. Now, some companies will compensate for cell phone bills, and that's, at least that's a step in the right direction. So they should compensate you for your cell phone bills. What about owner-operator pulling broker loads? How do we get compensated better? I assume that you mean pulling loads directly for the broker. If that's what we're talking about here, I just would set yourself a higher standard. Decide what you need per mile per that load, and it's got to be over $2 a mile these days. Anyway, if it's not over $2 a mile, I wouldn't even consider it. But you just need to turn down the cheap freight. Don't accept whatever the load brokers give you. You figure out what you need to make it worth your while. Don't let them tell you what they'll pay, because 9 times out of 10, they're trying to shove the difference in their pocket. I work local and pay hourly, whether I'm driving or sitting at the dock, loaded or unloaded. Who's this? Norman Bliss. You got a good deal there, Norman. Stick with that place. $15 after the first 2 hours? So you give them the first 2 hours for free? You should get paid for all the hours. The downfall of labor unions is the biggest wage killer. Well, the unions had They're good and bad points. I left CSRT a while back, got my CDL with my own money. Good for you, man. What do I think about Donald Trump? Oh, you're not even going to get me started on that. Anyway, load brokers, you've got to watch them. C.H. Robinson, one of the biggest load brokers, maybe the biggest in the United States, they pay their dispatchers a bonus on a bonus system for how much they can scrape out of the trucker's end and put in C.H. Robinson's pocket. So if C.H. Robinson's been offered $2,000 to pull the load, they'll offer it to you for $1,500. They'll take that $500. Yeah, C.H. Robinson's got to make a profit. They're only supposed to take about 8%, but they'll take that extra $500, stuff it in their pockets, and then go to the dispatcher that works for them and go, hey man, you did a good job. Here's $100 for that. It could have been in the trucker's pocket, should have been in the trucker's pocket, but it's making C.H. Robinson richer every day. They're a multi-million-dollar company, and that's multi-millions of dollars they've beaten truckers for. I hate giving up 2 hours for free at Shippers Shea. I don't like to give them any time at all. That's not, a present to the shipper from you. If the company wants to give them free time, that's fine, but the company better pay you for that time. So, there shouldn't be any free time. That's ridiculous. The wages have not kept up with the cost of living for the truck drivers. And seriously, truck drivers haven't had a significant wage increase in about 30 years now. And we're so far behind the 8 ball for money that I'm not sure how we'll ever be able to catch up. But we've got to start somehow, or just get out of the industry and go find something else, because it's just not going to pay your bills. Paid by the mile is outdated. The high volume of traffic, the hours of service, the time at the docks now, the length of the haul is shorter. All these things have added up into you donating 20, 30, sometimes 40 hours every week for free. I wish drivers will stop asking for detention time when they come in 5 hours early and we can't take them. You know what? I bet you that driver has called ahead and said, hey, I'm going to be in here then. And I don't see why it's not up to the driver to sit there for free. He's there with your freight. He's offering, to let you take it off. You should be able to build allowances into your schedules as shippers and receivers that you can compensate for that. I hauled tankers for Rom and Haas in the 90s. They paid us for all our time and all our miles. Yeah, and tanker companies were pretty good that way, and generally they're still paying better than freight companies. Tanker companies are usually a little better deal. They charge their customers and they pass that stuff on to you, and so they should. And the rest of the industry could take a lesson from a lot of those tanker companies. Mediocre pay attracts mediocre drivers. And I don't think mediocre drivers should be on our highways and interstates in among the driving public, driving four-wheelers, let alone driving tractor trailers. And the industry has brought us to this, and it's all over money. There's no safety involved. They're not thinking about safety. They're just thinking about putting a buck in their pockets, and that's wrong. They should think of the safety of the driving public. And if the carriers don't, the government needs to. And the carriers don't seem to care for the most part, especially the big ones. So I think government needs to step in and legislate trucking companies into paying their drivers as employees, because truly that's what they are. They're employees. They're not contractors. Hi, Andrew Jackson. Hi, hey Andrew. I've watched your stuff. It's pretty good. I like it. We have an hour from time of the appointment to get unloaded. That's, you know what, and I could even live with that. And a lot of the rail companies are like that, like CN or CP. If one of their sea containers, they put it on a chassis, put it on a truck, pull it to their customer when it comes off the rail. They bump the dock and they give them 45 minutes to unload the trailer. And if it's not empty in 45 minutes, then they start charging. And I've been at warehouses when these guys have bumped the dock, and you should see those receivers hop to it because they know that they've got 45 minutes. And those guys, all have been sitting there an hour before them. And the sea container will bump the dock. Those guys are empty before me. CN and those rail guys have the right idea. Give them 45 minutes, give them 30 minutes, give them a little leeway, but then just sock it to them, and they'll start hopping to it. When semis and any other trucks try to drive on the highway, I try to give them enough space. Well, that's a good idea. I looked into super service trucking. Martin Brower, receiver here. We do our best, just don't be late. And and that's true. But I've delivered to Martin Brower, and the Martin Brower I delivered to in Toronto, you couldn't even get a real semi into their docks. You needed their shunt truck to put it into one of their docks down there. They didn't have adequate room for a real truck. So I ended up having to wait for one of their shunt trucks to be free to put my trailer into their tiny little facility. That's my Martin Brower story. Now apparently they're pretty good to work for, and they're pretty good to haul too. But I only had the one crack with them, and I was in the big waiting time there. They were pretty quick once they got in the trailer, but they weren't too quick getting the trailer to the dock. Hi, Grandma. Jellyfish writes in, hi, Grandma. Hi, hello. But, yeah. Trucking is a dirty business. So you've got to expect that, and you've got to be able to work with that or get out. Now, not all outfits are dirty, but a lot of it is. So make sure you lease on or you hire on with a good outfit that pays you for everything that you do. Nobody's worse than Cisco Foods. $300 for lumpers, Shea Earl. Yeah, there's another thing, lumpers. Since when did it become your problem to pay the customer to take his freight off your trailer? Lumping is one of the biggest scams in the industry. I refuse to pay lumpers. Just don't do it. Call your dispatcher or talk to them or whatever, but don't take a dime out of your pocket to get them to take the freight off the trailer. That's their problem, to take the freight off the trailer. And generally, a lot of time you see that in the food industry, but that's just a scam. Just pull out of the dock, and when they decide they'll take it, then you can pull back in. But yeah, lumper, that's highway robbery, that is. Love your videos. Thank you, Christopher. How much would I like to get paid? Well, that's a really good question. I think it depends on the cost of living where you're located, really. I'm sure that someone that lives near New York City needs to make a canoe full of money because the cost of living there is outrageous. But our wages, truck drivers, when I started in this industry, truck drivers were middle income earners, upper middle income earners. They made slightly less than doctors. These days, most truck drivers can't even afford to buy their own home. The wages have slid that much. These days, truckers are low income workers. Their wages are comparable to taxi cab drivers and migrant workers. The wages are ridiculous. What is my opinion on automatic transmissions? Not really on the topic, but frankly, I don't care for them. They're expensive to buy, they're expensive to repair, and I know big companies are using automatic transmissions to get more and more guys in the trucks. Maybe it's easier for a new guy to learn how to drive an automatic transmission, but I'm more concerned with what they're paying the new guys or what they're paying all their guys. That's my issue. I don't much care whether it's an automatic or a standard. I prefer a standard. That's what I grew up with. But how many days do I run while trucking? I work 5 days a week now because I found that I was having to stay out so long. I was missing time with my kids, my family, my wife, and I just wasn't making the money to make up for missing that. So I work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I work by the hour, and that's all I'm going to do because I found that the rest of the time was wasted time for not a whole lot more money and a whole lot more headaches. So I've quit over the road trucking for that reason. I've parked my truck and trailer, and I've taken an hourly job as a company driver. Best thing I've ever done. Am I happy with my truck? The company truck? It's a truck. It's not as nice as my truck, but hey, I don't have a dollar invested in it. And even when it breaks, they're paying me, so I like that part. Drivers don't have the quality of life. Trucking with Brian. Brian, you are so right. That is the biggest problem with it. You lose sight of your quality of life because you're so busy running, you're so busy trying to make money that you lose sight of the most important things. And the quality of life, truly, that's really what it's all about. And who wants to hit, 65 or 70 years old, look back and not remember anything except being in the driver's seat? You've got to take the time to enjoy life. I did a video recently on taking a vacation, and you've got to do that. You've got to take more time with your family. And trucking used to pay enough that you could do that, and now it doesn't. You know what's something else trucking doesn't pay enough for anymore? There's no retirement plan for truck drivers. There's no pension for almost all of these guys. The idea was, back then, that you were paid enough that you could set money aside every week and every month to put away for your retirement or things like that. These days, truckers are only paid enough to live day to day, hand to mouth. And there's no pension, there's no retirement, there's no nothing. So that's part of what's been lost when the wages didn't keep up with the cost of living anymore. Yeah, I know a guy that quit being an owner-operator and now makes twice as much driving a straight truck. There are all sorts of stories like that now because these guys are getting off the road and getting better jobs driving locally. And yeah, they are making more money and they're home more. And that's an important thing anymore. It was always an important thing, just we were too busy running ragged to realize it at the time. Autos are good for city driving, but open road would prefer a manual. I can't say I've ever driven an automatic, so I can't say. But back to the topic, we're talking about money in your pocket. If we are regulated by the hour, we should be paid by the hour. Saddle sore. No, that's exactly right. We are regulated by the hour, and we should be paid by the hour. A single guy with no kids, is it worth it getting into truck driving? If you are a single guy, not married, young, why not give it a try for a few years? But the moment you're interested in getting married and having a family, get out of this industry because it's not worth your while. If you're going to be driving local or something like that where you're home every night or something like that, that's okay, as long as you're being paid by the hour. But the history of truckers with divorces, is staggering. You know, 80. I read a figure something like 80% of truck drivers have been divorced at least once, and there's no wonder because they're never home if they're an over the road driver. So no wonder their marriages don't stick together. So yeah, if you're serious about having a family and owning a home and having a quality of life issue, don't get into over the road anymore. It's not. It's just they just don't pay you enough for it. You lost a lot of weight having. You just need a good wife. You know, Jason, I was lucky that way. I told you I was lucky in my trucking career, and I was lucky that way too. And it's a wonder that she stayed, considering how long I was away. But yeah, I was lucky that way. I don't even start the truck unless it's paid by the hour. Good move. Good. That's exactly right. You know, my next door neighbor here has a backhoe, for instance. That guy with the backhoe makes $95 an hour, and he's home every day by 5 o'clock for supper. So if he's making $95 an hour to run a backhoe that costs $60,000, why would an owner-operator get paid $1 a mile for a $120,000 truck and be gone for weeks at a time? You're better off to buy the backhoe. It's not even close. You don't even have to think about that. She stayed with Dave Smith. Well, Dave Smith, I'm not sure I was a great guy, but she was a great girl, and I think that's why she stayed with me. Boy, she had the patience of Job to stick it out, but I'm going to tell her what you said, Dave. I appreciate that. But yeah, she is a good girl. Yes, you do need a backhoe, Michael Blackwell. Sorry, Mike. But yeah, those construction guys do a whole lot better than truck drivers. We need to get together on this pay issue, and it skipped up before I could read who wrote that in, but absolutely we need to get together on it.
How do you suggest we do that?
How do I suggest we do that? You know, I had done a video, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, and if you look back, the truck strikes of the 70s and the early 80s never really accomplished anything, and I was caught up in those at the time, and well, the one in the 70s that I recall was quite violent, and I wouldn't want to go through that again for anybody. But you know what? At the end of the day, everybody just got bluffed off. And when Mike Parkhurst back, I think it was the 80s that he led that strike, they just got bluffed off and nothing ever changed. And I'm not a believer in violence or militancy of any sort, you know. I don't think that's the way to go. I just suggest that, you know what, we pick a week and everybody pick the same week and we all decide to take off and go fishing. No pickets or protests or anything like that. Just everybody takes 4 or 5 days off, spends time with their family, goes fishing. Everybody just phones in sick. And you know what? The nation will grind to a halt without trucks. After a couple days, 3 days, the grocery shelves will be empty. It'll be hell in a handbasket. And everybody will sit up and take notice. And they'll get the message. I don't think we need to tramp 100 guys up to Washington or anything like that. They'll get the message. You know what? If we're just not getting paid enough, we're just not that interested in working all the time. So if you're going to pay me for, 3/4 of a job, I'll give you 3/4 of my time or half my time. But we should all get together and go, hey, you know what? Spring is here. Let's take a week off and do something with our families. We're getting paid squat anyway. Let's just take a week off. And do that a couple of times. By God, they'll notice. The nation will grind to a halt without us. We've got an incredible amount of power as truck drivers, and we could shut the nation down in effect. I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, but They need to start paying attention, and you can't allow yourself to be bluffed by the politicians in Washington like the guys in the 70s and 80s were, because nothing ever really came of that. So until you see the money in your pocket, I would just keep deciding on taking vacations all at the same time, going, hey, nothing's happening yet, no more money, time for another break, everybody go fishing for another week. They'll get it sooner or later. Yeah, let's do it. Shut down. Will Brow, let's do it. Shut down. We are being taken advantage of. But as I say, it doesn't have to be a nasty thing. I'm not for that at all. I'm just saying everybody phone in sick and go do something else other than drive the truck and leave the freight just hanging for a week and watch what happens. Do that a couple of times. Boy, things will change. Oh, sure, the dispatchers will be mad. The companies will be mad. They'll threaten to fire you. But there's a driver shortage anyway. Let them find somebody else. They're not paying you enough anyway. You might as well go work construction for what they're paying. Then you'll be home every night. They need you more than you need them these days. So, yeah, everybody just take a little vacation once in a while. I was making more than $1 a mile over 20 years ago. Broke my neck and had to retire. You know what? I was making $1 a mile in 1984. And that's virtually all they're paying hardly anymore now. And I'll tell you what, fuel was a whole lot cheaper and insurance was a whole lot cheaper back then. $1 a mile is a joke. Just, God, if you're not over $2 a mile, you're blowing your brains out. It's just going to take you a while to realize it if you own your own truck. $1 a mile, you're just wasting your time digging a slow hole into the ground. Harry Rourke, you're an idiot.
He's gone.
What am I drinking? This is a vodka cooler. It's called Vex. Yes, Vex. What do you think about hourly pay for, and I missed the message, it faded out of sight. I'm going to have to learn.
For LTL drivers.
$11 an hour for LTL drivers?
No, he didn't say, what do you think about hourly pay for LTL drivers?
Oh, I think everybody should be paid hourly wage. It's the time you're putting in. Why shouldn't you be paid for all your time? Hassan, we definitely need to shut down. Sadly, I'm afraid we do because nobody's listening. So if they're not paying us to do proper work, why bother doing it? You can keep wanting more pay, but we're all being phased out of the labor fields. Well, those autonomous trucks aren't going to be here for a generation. We all know it. So I think if you're going to make some money in trucking, you better get on it and capitalize on it while you can, because in another generation, they may not need trucking drivers or truck drivers, but we should get on it now. What do I think about unions? I thought unions were really a good thing, and it's too bad they blew it by being crooked with Jimmy Hoffa's guys and all that. Yeah, they are delicious, aren't they? Michael, yeah. But I thought if unions now are such a dirty word that nobody trusts them after what Jimmy Hoffa did and everything, but that, truly they were a good thing. If they'd been properly run, it would have been a great thing for us. Look at the teachers union. That was an honest union, properly run, and those guys make great money and have great benefits and a retirement package. They have all that. Teachers unions are some of the most powerful. Stan, that's right. And if the Teamsters had been properly run, we'd be in a whole different position today. Now, I don't know. I'm sure Hoffa was pressured into what happened there with the crime syndicates, but it doesn't change anything. Unions now are a dirty word in the trucking industry. So who's going to trust them again? I really don't know. Well, a few weeks ago in Miami, Florida, truckers were protesting their wages. I hadn't heard that. That's interesting. Yeah, if we could all just get together on the same week and say, hey, that's enough and go fishing. Didn't trucker exec X blow a hole in your... I didn't understand that message. But yeah, if we could all get on the same page, 42 cents a mile, 37 bucks for delivery, 3,000 miles a week, home every 2 days, plus benefits, doesn't sound bad. For these, and there are decent trucking jobs out there, don't get me wrong. Part of the trick is to find a decent place to work, and there are good places to work. I'm working for a company now that hauls their own product, and those guys aren't in the trucking business. They're in the manufacturing business, and they just want to keep good people. So they're not trying to compete with trucking companies. They're just paying a fair wage. So if you find these private companies that happen to have a trucking fleet, that might not be such a bad thing because they're interested in keeping good people. Let's do a week without truckers. I'd be happy to go a week without driving the truck. What's the best tire for a truck? I always bought Michelin or Bridgestone, frankly, but man, they're running like $600 a tire these days. And that's why you got to get paid for all your time, because you need to buy tires and fuel and stuff like that. You can't make it just running by the mile anymore. You got to get paid for all your time. Trucking is expensive. The maintenance, if you're an owner-operator, the maintenance on a truck is incredible these days. A motor job these days can run you $30,000. Just as a for instance, tires, $600 a piece. An oil change, $300. You've got to be making good money. There's no point in buying a truck and then slowly losing your shirt and losing your house all at the same time. Four-wheelers will be happy to have us off the road. You can bet that's true, but you know what? I'd be happy to see them off the road, so I guess that's fair. Losing my mind. I hope it's not me you think's losing my mind, but I'm not saying it's easy. And you know what? I've got no dog in this fight. I've got a good job. I'm semi-retired. I don't work too hard. I'm just saying, you know what? It's a whole lot different than when I was trucking, and I think it's dastardly how they treat drivers and what they expect of drivers, and then pay them what they do. I think it's criminal. I don't think they should be getting away with it. Those, especially the mega carriers, they've got millions and millions of dollars just in real estate. So they can certainly afford to pay their people better. Just a quick question there. There was a guy asked about glider kits. If I was buying a new truck, that'd be the way I'd go, frankly. I'd get a glider kit and put my old cat motor, rebuild my old cat motor and put it in my glider kit. That's what I would be doing. The new trucks with emissions issues just aren't working properly. And you know what? You can't afford downtime when you own a truck. You've got to be able to run the thing as much as possible to pay for it. But again, off topic, but that's what I do. Can I talk about racism in trucking? Let us know when you take a vacation. I'm down for a break. You know what? I'm just waiting for the weather to turn nice here, but I'll be taking it. I just came off a break. I went down to Florida, and that was pretty nice, but I'll be taking another break here in a couple of weeks. Gliders are outlawed in Ontario. That's true. The guy's correct there. I'm sorry I missed your name. Because what they want in Ontario, and I heard the U.S. is going to go to this too if they haven't already, but in Ontario they want the year of the glider kit to meet the emission standards of that year rather than of the motor. So that's how Ontario has beat the glider kit solution to faulty trucks. And there's, here I am living in Ontario, but that's part of the reason I haven't gone that route. That's part of the reason I retired and parked my truck, was because I would have bought a glider kit and kept going, but I would have risked getting caught by the province of Ontario. Now I did 98% of my trucking was in the States because I couldn't make any money trucking across Canada. The rates are terrible. So I did all my trucking in the US. I'd load, in the Toronto area and head into the States. But still, there's about 200, 300 miles there where I could have been caught. But I'd have done it because you've got to survive in trucking, frankly. There's all sorts of places that come up with stupid regulations, and Ontario's famous for them. But, the trick, if you're in business in trucking, you've got to survive. It's the number one thing, pay the bills. Yeah, that carb law in California, who's Michael, that's why I spent the majority of my career hauling produce out of California, and I really liked it. But because of carb and my older truck, I quit running out there when my truck became redundant or illegal out in California. But really, those were my best years of trucking, were hauling produce out of Salinas, and I really enjoyed it. I made good money at it. But the carb thing, it just wasn't paying enough to make me finance a new truck and a new trailer, because carb patrols the reefers as well. And it just wasn't enough money in it anymore to finance a new truck and trailer that might not have run properly because of this emissions crap. Would I recommend pay system to be kilometer by the mile? I recommend it to be by the hour. I don't think anyone should get paid by the mile or the kilometer anymore, because you get beat when you get stuck in traffic, get beat when you get stopped at the docks waiting to load. Good God, there's some guy sent a message here in Russian or something like that. Don't read Russian. Sorry. Ontario has regs for trucks being governed at 100. Ontario has regs for trucks being governed at 105. That's true. And there's another stupid Ontario regulation that I was talking about. Yeah, trucking in Ontario is tough enough, but because there's no money in it. But then all these stupid rules on top of it. And the MTO here are very they're very thorough. So you just can't get by them easily. So they've just regulated owner-operators right out of business pretty much. Rookie driver, who to drive for? Depends on where you live there, rookie. There's got to be a good carrier near you, but I don't imagine it's one of the mega carriers, frankly. You might have to go that route to get the training, but a lot of guys are installing passive filters on older trucks. For passing emissions? I don't know. But yeah, there are all sorts of tricks around this emission equipment, but you don't really want to do that, but you've got to survive in this industry too. The number one deal is to pay for the truck, pay for your house, and pay the bills. So you've got to do what you've got to do. Hopefully you can do it honestly, but man, sometimes you wonder. Anyway, that's how I solved that whole problem. I just retired when I did, and I went to work for a company getting paid by the hour. Do I have medical insurance? I certainly do, and the company that I'm working for provides it for me. Yes, you can run off-road with fuel and reefers. Thoughts on companies installing driver-facing cameras? I'm completely against that. I wouldn't work for a company that was filming me. I can understand them pointing it out at the road and filming incidents that happen in front of you. I can't find any justification for them filming you while you're driving. So I think that's an invasion of privacy. I wouldn't drive for a company like that. They don't let you film them. Why would you let them film you? No, I don't agree with that at all. I think that's crap. I wouldn't. The moment they put a camera in like that would be my last day with that carrier. Period. Well, you've got me mad just thinking about that. Internet load boards? Jesus, I don't know. Colored fuel and reefers can be used. Yeah, but I never wanted to chance it. Here in Ontario, they're nasty about that stuff too. It's just, for the extra few cents that you save for colored fuel, I wouldn't take the risk. I've had a fuel audit, and the guy was here for 7 days, just sorting through all my fuel receipts, then matching it up to my mileage. It was a pain in the butt to have that audit. Isn't it a law to speak the language where you drive? I believe it is. I believe it is. I know, I talked to a scale guy in Iowa one time, and they were just dragging in trucks out of Ontario to see if they could speak English. And if they couldn't speak English, they were making them park the trucks. And that sounds a little harsh, but I completely agree with that, because if they can't speak English, they certainly can't understand the road signs or anything like that. So if they can't speak English, I don't know how they've passed the test in the first place. They shouldn't have a license, in my opinion, if they can't read the language and they can't understand the signs like construction signs, speed limit signs. They shouldn't be on the road. Name good private manufacturing companies. God, I'd have to stop and think about that, but it would be different, no matter where you lived, it would be different companies. Now, I know Walmart's all over the place. I know Walmart has a private fleet. I'm not sure how they treat their guys there. I know there's been a lawsuit in California that Walmart lost because they didn't pay their guys properly. But that's the idea anyway. Companies, manufacturing companies that haul their own products rather than companies that are in trucking, like Schneider or Werner or something like that, because those guys will just pay as little as they can possibly get away with, especially if they're publicly traded companies, because those companies are owned by shareholders, and shareholders only care about their dividends and nothing else, and they don't care if you're working for peanuts. What they care about is the size of their dividend checks. Yeah, Shay, I hear you there about the cameras. $20 an hour, okay for local runs? I guess it depends on where you live. In a small town, $20 an hour is pretty good money. But it depends on where you live as to how much they should be paying you. I have a CDL, I'm not driving anymore. I've done 34-hour resets I'm not going to get paid for. No thanks. Absolutely right. 70 hours, 8th day. Do I still have my truck? Yes, sir, I do. I've been working for this as a company driver for a couple years now, and I do still have my truck. I don't expect the rates to improve, but I've hung on to it anyway. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up for today. Thank you, everybody, for writing in. Drive safe, take care, and we'll see you on the backhaul.